Chapter 12. Family Ties. 2 days later, Lindy was at the diner preparing for the morning like she always did when she heard a knock at the front door right before it opened. She looked up from the bowls of fresh fruit she'd taken out. "No sign today?" He was wearing that vest. As he turned to close the door behind himself, she saw the skull in flames again. Instead of his hair being out, he wore 2 French braids that stopped at the center of his back. When he turned to face her, his cheeks were shadowed with hair, and his eyes were a little red. Whatever he was wearing for a shirt beneath the heavy-looking vest was barely there, and he walked with ease over to his regular stool and sat. A cigarette was by his ear. She didn't even know he smoked. But it hit her just then. This wasn't Noah. This was Scorpio. "Can I get a coffee?" His voice sounded like wet gravel. "No." That brought his full eye contact. Lindy came to another quick realization and rounded the counter in a flash, closing all the blinds. It was a precaution she never considered taking before, but now things had changed. She would have way too much explaining to do if someone caught him here. Lindy turned to see he was eyeing her from the stool. She had to climb out of the booth to stand. "You just walk in here demanding coffee and that's it?" "I didn't demand, I asked." Lindy pointed at him. "You know exactly what I mean." Noah sighed, rolling his neck back like it had kinks. Only God knew what he'd spent the previous night doing. The spikes coning his ears glinted in the overhead light. Lindy passed by his back, ignoring the giant skull, and went back behind the counter. "Will said he ran you guys out of town." "Oh, he did?" Noah's brows rose before his features slanted like a Cheshire cat. "Sheriff Will should wake up earlier." She leaned toward him. "Noah, I don't understand what's going on. I told you how things were out here. Why would you all ride through town like that?" The stool creaked when Noah stood up. He came around the back of the counter. Like he lived there, he grabbed a mug and started the coffee maker. Lindy stared at him in disbelief. Apparently with his back to her, he knew this. "I watched you do this 1,000 times. "I don't care about the coffee." "Well, I do. I care about why you're here." "I came to see you." He turned with the coffee percolating behind him. There was about 2 feet of space separating them. "Like I always do," he finished. "You know what I mean." Lindy spoke as she read the patch over his chest. "Scorpio." The name sounded like an accusation from her lips. "I told you who I am, Lindy. I'm a nomad and an MC." "Don't treat me like I'm stupid." She raised her hand. "What are they doing here with you?" Frustration bled out in her voice. Her worry, her fear, all of it. Because just when she thought she'd made a smart move to get her life moving in a better direction, the rug got swept out from under her. "You told me you were on a cross-country trip." She felt stupid. She felt stupid saying the words. "I thought you were alone." "I was." He turned and grabbed his coffee. Lindy took a hand and rubbed her forehead. She needed to get her eyes off him for a minute. "Lindy, we aren't a bunch of Vikings planning on pillage. You coming here wasn't by chance at all, was it?" His jaw shifted as he denied her eye contact. "No." "You couldn't have told me any of this before I agreed to marry you?" "It's club business," he answered simply, turning back to pour himself coffee. "Club business?" Lindy was taken aback and didn't hide it. "Club business?" "Yeah." His cool demeanor only heightened her agitation. "I want you to relax, all right?" he said softly before blowing on the piping coffee mug. Yes. Because the marriage stays a secret, and nothing's going to happen to you or Max. I wouldn't allow it." She pointed at him again. "You put me in the middle of something I don't want to be in. If your MC comes back here, all hell is going to break loose." "Listen," he put the mug down. "When I say something, I mean it. If I tell you that you and Max are safe, that's it. Club business doesn't have anything to do with us." Noah seemed as close as he'd ever been to yelling, and instead of being afraid, she was more upset. Whether she believed him or not, she was going to have to deal with the fallout of whatever his true motives were. So was the rest of the town. Did he care about any of that? Lindy couldn't let herself be humiliated a second time. Will had hurt her enough with his lies. She had to stay strong and focused, especially for Max. She was all he had. "There is no us," she said tightly. "Just a deal I made." The words were for him as well as herself. Noah's eyes swung to her before he closed their distance, keeping his stare direct. You think being pissed at me changes anything? No wonder he was after the coffee. He smelled like pure alcohol. It changes everything, she wanted to say, because now I know you're a liar. Yet her mouth stayed closed as he hovered near her. His expression wasn't angry, but still managed to be intense. You think it's going to change what's going to happen between us? Lindy's face flushed, and she didn't want to hear anything else. You need to go. Noah blinked, pulling his body back. Then he turned back to pick up the coffee from the counter. As he rounded it, he picked a cherry from the fruit bowl and popped it into his mouth, pulling back the stem. Tastes familiar. He used his back to open the door, winking at her as he left. Can I get some more coffee, Lindy? Her focus jumped from the random wall to the man that was speaking to her. Of course, Mr. Baker. She grabbed the pot and began refilling his cup. Carl Baker was one of the regulars. Hell, everyone was a regular. He was an older man with deep brown skin and eyes the exact same color. She never had solid proof, but she was sure he dated her grandmother at one point when she was younger. They both migrated out west from the south and worked at the old car plant before it closed down. It was the lunch rush, but instead of paying attention to customers, she was thinking about Noah. Scorpio. Whoever the hell he was. What a nice way to think about your husband. I don't like it. Something's fishy is up. She was given a refill of orange juice to Mike, the mechanic, the town's only one. He was a novelty, just like Jeff. Guys riding through town like that, mohawks and shit, hell, all of them are probably killers, he continued. I'm just glad they didn't stop. This was spoken by his mom, who was eating with him. She was one of Peggy's last regulars. Lindy, can I get another bowl of grits? Sure, Miss Canton. I got my shotgun, Ma, just in case. We're out of grits, Jeff yelled. No, you're not, Miss Canton yelled back. Biting the inside of her lip, Lindy went back behind the counter. The front door opened, and Will stepped inside. There he is, Mike said. He started clapping his meaty hands as a few others offered Will praise. Will took off his hat. Lindy continued on her tasks of putting the orange juice away. Good day to you all. I know we had a bit of commotion the other day. I just want to assure you all that myself and Deputy Laurel have had a talk with the motorcyclists. That was the gang, Sheriff, Mike cut in. We let them know they're not wanted in our town under any circumstances, and we rode them well past city limits. We'll be up in patrols, but we doubt they'll be returning. One of them had spikes in his hair, Miss Canton added. Miss Canton, as your sheriff, I promise I won't allow men like that to wander over our town. We appreciate you, Sheriff. Carl nodded in his direction. Will returned it. Thank you, Mr. Baker. After Will finished his small talk and most of the patrons headed out of the diner, he sat down at the counter. Hello. Lindy was wiping it down. Hi. Are you doing okay? You looked pretty shaken up when it happened. I'm fine. She still wasn't used to having regular conversations with him. It was something that they used to do all the time, but those days were long gone. Is Max all right? I know the engines must have scared him. Lindy's wiping almost came to a complete stop. He got a little agitated, but he's a trooper. Will nodded. Jeff had gone out for a smoke, so they were the only two there now. The town's going to be safe. It was kind of strange, but... She stopped. But what? I'm sure they won't be back. Lindy's heart was pumping so hard she felt it in her throat. Will tapped his knuckles on the counter. His eyes appeared a little tired. You know my instincts, Lindy. When it kicks in... And what's your instinct saying? The back door sounded, signaling Jeff had come back in. Will cleared his throat. We're going to have a town hall meeting Saturday. You should come. Lindy made a face. I know that look. Don't start. Lindy turned her head a bit. If you didn't try to get the man a coffee, Jeff called through the kitchen window. You want a steak, Sheriff? You need a treat for keeping the town clean? Will stood up from the stool. Nope, Jeff, I'm good. I need to head back to the station. Lindy? Noah was pretty sure he'd fucked up. As he walked up the hot hill behind Tin, he kept thinking about Lindy. Any trust they'd built was gone. Why the hell would he go and see her without any sleep in close to 24 hours and a decent portion of Jack Daniels twisting around his gut? All he remembered was it was the morning. He needed to see her and not giving a shit about being banned from town. Not only had he probably scared the shit out of her, she might not even like him anymore. He failed big time trying to put words to what was between them. It wasn't necessary because he felt it. And she did too. She also had the right to be pissed. She was his fucking wife. The how and why didn't matter. When he arrived in town, he never thought his time here would get complicated so quickly, and he'd find himself in a situation where he was obligated to someone that wasn't a death skull. Lindy had trusted him, been vulnerable with him, and she hadn't lied to him. She was his baby girl. But for the last 10 years, nothing came before the club. It was all Noah knew. He had no idea how to balance things out. Noah and Tin finally made it to the top, with the huge dark brown house a few feet in front of them. The others were waiting nearby discreetly in case shit popped off. Nice place you got here. Thank you. Hugh Langley's chair creaked as he sat behind his desk. Tin took a seat after it was offered with a gesture from Hugh. He was old in a way where Noah couldn't really guess the number, but he opened the door himself, which had been a surprise. And thank you for agreeing to meet us so soon. Hugh gave a slight nod. Your appearance in town upset a lot of residents. It always does. Amber Falls is a small town. As you can see from the welcome sign, less than 500 people live here. They're used to quiet and peace. Understood. We're here to talk business about some property. We hear you're the man to speak to about that. I understand your man over here already spoke to my daughter about some property. He did? What's your proposal? The warehouse property and the land behind it. We'd like to purchase it. The plan is to run a couple of businesses. What couple would that be? Automotive repair and construction. We're willing to offer more than the selling price if all that pesky contamination stuff can get taken care of. And you're planning to relocate here, I presume? He leaned forward to read Tin's patch. From Tallahassee. That's a long ways away. We'll keep to ourselves. Trust. Hugh smoothed his tie with a liver-spotted hand. What are your numbers? Noah pulled the paperwork from his cut and placed it on the desk. Hugh grabbed a pair of reading glasses before looking over the papers. You realize the town folk won't want you here. He spoke as he read. What do you want, though, Mr. Langley? Your asking price was $95,000. We're offering close to $2. That is, in fact, what the number said. What guarantee would I have that you would only be fixing cars in that warehouse, Mr. Jeffries? This is the part where you let me know what would ease your mind, Mr. Langley. Hugh lowered the paperwork. A small grin touched his lips.